Hello and welcome to Obehi Podcast. I'm your host, Obehi A14, and I strongly believe that everyone has a story to share. Now let's get started with this episode. What really are even the importance of connecting among Africa? Like, what are the advantages of connecting among Africa? How can we do businesses together? Because it's very important that as a people, because every other people in the world basically do this, whether you are looking at the German, looking at the Chinese, looking at the Japanese, looking at the Russians, looking at the Italians, wherever they are in the world, they try to work together. That is how they are able to survive, because basically, as an individual, you can't go anywhere. But among Africa, we have not been tapping much in this area. So I think this is where we are going to start this conversation. So, Mr. Kennedy, many people already know you here because you've been present here before. I don't know if you want to start the conversation from there. Like, what really are the benefits of networking and collaborating among ourselves as Africans? Please go ahead.
Thank you so much for inviting me once again on your very exciting and important program that seeks to bring Africans together, both those who are on the continent and those that are in the diaspora. And your topic today is quite important and relevant, particularly at a time when there is a paradigm shift amongst many Africans who seek to see Africa gain its place in the global world in terms of development. And I think it is important that if we want to reach the levels that other countries elsewhere have reached, it is important that networking amongst Africans becomes a priority. Networking and collaboration are critical, especially if we want to develop our continent, because it is from networking that we see people exchanging ideas, sharing skills and expertise. And this is important, particularly given the effect that on the continent of Africa, we have places endowed with different natural resources. And these natural resources need to be used for the benefit of the people that are on the African continent. So the interdependence of the economies of African countries makes it imperative that Africans should network and should also collaborate in a number of things that they seek to achieve. And this is informed by the fact that if we look at Southern Africa, there are certain raw materials, there are certain things that are done in the southern part of Africa, which are not necessarily found or done in Northern Africa or Eastern or Western Africa. But these things, be it resources or things that are manufactured, they are also needed in these countries. So it becomes important that we on the African continent, we need to work together, we need to collaborate on a number of things. I will give you another example that we have the Zambezi River. And the Zambezi River has been the source of electricity for a number of countries. In order for us to be able to utilize that resource, Zimbabwe and Zambia must collaborate. Mozambique and Zimbabwe and Malawi should also collaborate together in order to exploit and tap on this particular resource and bring lights into these countries. In addition, we can look at other neighboring countries. They are also reliant on some of these resources. So it is critical that throughout the continent, we find ways as Africans to collaborate, to network, so that we share ideas, we work on projects together, we share skills, we share the human resource and capital that we have, and by so doing, we will grow our economies on the continent of Africa.
Thank you very much, Mr.
Let me also add.
Yeah, please.
Let me also add and say that this interdependence, this collaboration and networking is not only for the people that are on the continent of Africa. It should also bring on board those that have been in the diaspora for some time, because they've had exposure, which becomes critical to help develop our economies on Africa.
Okay, absolutely. That is very important. In fact, this is from the point of view we are actually having this conversation, because right now I'm in Italy and you are in South Africa. Basically, you are also an immigrant, that you are coming from Zimbabwe and you are in South Africa. I'm originally from Nigeria and I'm in Italy. So somehow we are all moving, we are all in movement. So collaboration is something that is going to be very, very important for us individually and for us as a group. So the term collaboration, you use it a number of times, and of course we are going to use it a number of times in this conversation. How would you describe collaboration and networking? How would you describe it, of course, within the context of Africa and Pan-Africa, if you want to put it like that?
In the context of Africa or Pan-Africa, collaboration is coming together of individuals or communities or organizations to work together on a particular project, and to make sure that this project is successfully implemented for the benefit of the community or individuals that are involved. Whilst networking brings together people or organizations, or to discuss, share ideas, and also experiences that they would have had in various spheres of life. And it is important that networking is done at a continental, even regional, and at country level, because it is through networking that people begin to have new ideas. It is through networking that people begin to understand certain skills that are being used elsewhere. It is through networking that we begin to understand circumstances that are obtaining in various environments on the continent of Africa and elsewhere. It is through networking that we begin to understand each other as individuals or as citizens on the continent of Africa, be it Nigerian, Zimbabwean, South African. We need to come together so that we share ideas. And it is from the sharing of ideas that we get certain things that we can then go and implement in our own communities, in our own countries, regionally or continentally. So collaboration and networking are both critical for development on the African continent.
Thank you for that again. Now, of course, we are going to be looking at an issue now, because if everything was rosy in terms of collaboration among Africa, we might not be here talking about it, because it is not rosy. That is why we are talking about it, because we are trying to promote it, because we see that among other people, like I was just saying before, whether you are looking at the Chinese in the world, it's not only in, if you are looking at China only in, the Chinese only in China, they might not be able to make headway that much, because we are all interdependent, no? But since you have a little bit of China in the US, a little bit of China in Europe, all of them working together for the interest of China, then it becomes very easy for them to be able to go inside, because now you are producing something, you need to market it somewhere to the people who you don't even know. So you're going to have legs and hands and eyes. All these parts are going to be very, very important. So for other people, it might be working for them easily. But for us, Africa, it's not working for us as we expect. Sometimes we have a lot of things to justify it, because we have different languages, and because this country was colonized by French, the other was colonized by English. But I don't really think if that is enough to justify why we are not collaborating enough. Now, just to cite one example, in 1971, if I'm not mistaken, Walter Rodney wrote an important book that he called How Europe Underdeveloped Africa. In this book, he made mention of something very important. He was making a comparison between Abidjan and Accra, which are just two adjacent cities in West Africa, saying that if you were to make a call between, maybe you are in Abidjan, you are making a call to Accra, this call need to move from Accra Sorry, they need to move from Abidjan to Paris, and from Paris to London, and then back to Abidjan. But you are just, sorry, and then back to Accra. But you are just in two cities that are very close to each other. And this was many years ago. But until today, many economies in Africa are still run like this. So the question I want to ask you now, Mr. Kennedy, is why do we run our system like this? Why are we unable to collaborate among ourselves so that we can prosper in this world?
It is quite sad that the majority of us on the African continent, or Africans in general, find it very difficult to work together. And this is not because of language. It has nothing to do with the boundaries that were imposed on us, but I think it has to do with the colonization that has been planted into our heads, to the extent that we have become people who do not believe in most of the things that we do. We do not believe in ourselves. We do not trust ourselves as Africans. Later on, we do not trust our neighbor as an African neighbor. That is why we have had the cases of xenophobia on the African continent. It is because we have self-hate as Africans. And it is time that we begin to look at our brothers and sisters and ourselves, introspect, and teach ourselves that we are capable as Africans in our diversity to grow our own continent. We have that which it takes in order for us to be able to be a continent that we are proud of. So one very important thing that we need to do is attitudinal change amongst ourselves as Africans. Believe in ourselves, become proud with our identity as Africans, and understand that we are not a lesser being as Africans. We are equal to the task at any given time. Once we begin to trust ourselves, once we begin to love ourselves, we will be able to work with other African brothers and sisters on the continent, knowing very well that what we do, we can do it to the best of our abilities. Even when we look at developed economies, they were developed primarily using Africans, which means that we have that which it takes to work together and bring Africa to where we want it to be. We need to start to trust one another. We need to begin to look at ourselves and know and understand that we can do things to the best of our abilities like any other individual on the world. We are not second-class citizens at all. We are capable, and what the divide that we find amongst ourselves is because many a times we do not trust one another. Many a times we do not value the work that we do as Africans on the continent. So it should, but the onus is on us as Africans to begin to trust one another, to begin to work together as a collective to develop our own continent without entrusting the resources and the things that we need on our continent to other individuals who come from the West or elsewhere. Because we as Africans in our diversity, we have the skills, we have the knowledge, and we are capable of transforming our own lives. I was making an argument today of if we look at what is currently happening, where we have the COVID vaccine, most of the vaccines that are currently being used, they have not been developed here on the African continent. But those on the African continent who have developed their own medicine, they've had it, they want it to be validated or approved by the Western world in order for it to be used in Africa, which is very sad. Why do we need approval from elsewhere other than approving it on our own continent? Because we have developed it here, we have developed that medicine here. And the other thing is, we have also seen situations in which we have had things that are developed on the African continent, and they are taken out of the continent in order to be approved and certified that they can be used on our continent. Yet we have the capacity and the ability to produce and also to make sure that these things are run in the best way possible for us who are on the continent. So my argument would be, in order for us to develop our Africa through networking and collaboration, we need to begin to value ourselves as Africans and believe in ourselves and believe in our brothers. It starts with me and then it goes to you. And all of us, when we begin to trust one another and work with one another, there is no reason why the interdependence and the interconnectedness that we seek to have on the continent of Africa can survive and thrive.
Thank you so much for that. Okay, I want to believe that when we are talking of collaboration, both in terms of individual and in this case, in terms of regional blocks, that some of the blocks that have been set up in Africa, whether you are looking at the West Africa, East Africa, South Africa, which of course we are going to concentrate more on because you are in South Africa or Southern Africa, this block probably are set up to sort of facilitate collaboration and networking among Africa because it is not there. We need it to be able to grow. So can you tell us something about the Mamunda? I think it's the collaboration Mansbura. Anyway, you can tell us the full meaning of it. Tell us about also the existence. Please go ahead.
Right. In Zimbabwe, we started an organization that is called Masembura Musana Development Association. This is an association that is made up of two chiefs. One that is Chief Musana and the other one Chief Masembura. And they so happen to be in one constituency where we are saying we would want the communities that are there to make use of the resources that are in their backyards, to begin to tap on the resources that are within the community, to begin to work all together as communities, to plow back in the communities and develop their own communities without looking elsewhere or for other people to come and do it for themselves. The first people to work on the land in Musana and Masembura should be the people that are in Musana and Masembura using the resources that are there, be it human resource, be it the natural resources that are in their communities. They need to be tapped for the development of that particular region before we start looking for government and the other organizations to come and assist the people of Musana and Masembura. And it is also meant to create employment for the majority of the youth that have had many times to relocate and go out of Musana and Masembura to look for employment. So we created or came up with these particular organizations to make sure that it creates employment within their own backyard, within their own communities, within the constituents, so that whilst they are working in that community, they are in a position to develop it. And they will value their community because it is out of their sweat that the community will develop. And it is out of the use of the resources in their community that they can develop their community. So this is the premise upon which we came up with Masembura Musana Development Association. And we believe that it is in a position to be a model that others can work on to develop their own communities. And each community or each constituency, once it starts to develop, you will see that Zimbabwe will also develop as a collective. And when others model it along the lines of Mamuda, we will also see the same model being exported to other countries for use. And it is important that we have these associations that bring together communities to develop their areas.
Okay, that is very interesting. Now, let's try to like think back a little bit, say maybe in the pre-colonial era, because I want somebody to understand that this idea of working together is not something that is completely new to us. It's something that, of course, as human beings, that is something that should be very normal for us to do, because no one can do it alone. No? For this reason, we need to sort of collaborate among ourselves. So just like Mamunda, is there some other thing you can lay hand on that you can make reference to, whether you are looking at Southern African experience or in other part of Africa, maybe other form of collaboration among ourselves? Is there anything that we can lay hand on?
No, there are quite a number of areas that we can lay hands on. In South Africa here, we have in the northwest part of South Africa, or in the northwest province, the people in the northwest province are developing their areas using the resources that are being exploited in that province. And we also have the same thing happening in, I think it is in Mpumalanga or Limpopo, where communities are also coming together, but taking advantage of the resources that are being exploited there to develop their communities. And we can see it elsewhere in other communities, because this is not a new concept per se, but it's a concept that we are beginning to reintroduce amongst ourselves after it had died for some time. Because in the past, even where we used to have in our peasant communities, where we're doing peasant farming, we would bring together people within a community to assist or work together in a Mr. X farm. Then the next day they are in Mr. L, and so on and so on. Collaboration has always been there. And we are also thinking that we can even come up with collaboration among those that are in the diaspora and their parent countries. We have also started with what we have termed Zimbabwe Development, Zimbabwe Diaspora Investment Association. We have also started what we business associations, where we are bringing together business people so that they can begin to input in their own country to assist in the development. But this is based on the fact that as individuals, we might not have the economic leverage to go into the country and invest. And it becomes now imperative that we bring in people of diverse skills and working in different workstations, come together, pool our resources, and share ideas. Then we begin to go out there and invest in our country. We have seen this working with other nationalities. China is an example, which was developed primarily through the use of their diaspora communities. And we in the diaspora can also do the same to build our countries. And those that are not on the continent of Africa, who are in the diaspora, can also collaborate as the African diaspora and bring their resources together, bring their skills and the knowledge base together, so that it can be used on the continent of Africa for it to develop. So the people that are in the diaspora are quite critical, a critical component, particularly when they come together and work hands and work together to pool their resources, ideas, skills, and share experiences so that it can be invested on the continent of Africa. That's one way in which we can also develop our communities and develop our countries or communities. And through such kind of networking and collaboration taking place in various communities, countries, and in the regional blocks is quite critical for the development of Africa. There is nothing bad in different nationalities coming together in order to develop, be it one country or a region. SADC is a regional bloc, ECOWAS and AFTAC, which have started right now. All these are communities that are being brought together so that they can work together in order to develop the continent of Africa. And we commend people who are coming up with these ideas, and we only urge them to make sure that they work together cooperatively or collaboratively to develop the communities which they stand for or seek to develop.
That is really very interesting, it appeared that somehow, maybe is a time that have come, or so I want to believe, that it appeared that a lot of people are actually reasoning the same way, in that here in the diaspora, there is a lot of activity that are going on within the line of collaboration, in that people perhaps have realized that the time has come that we must network together. We must network together. There is no other alternative to this. And it's not the idea that maybe the wrong idea that Europe is going to save Africa by this misinformation of I'm helping you without you doing anything for me. It doesn't work. Of course, it have never worked for the past 400 years that we know of. So Africans or the African in diaspora have resources. Of course, I'm not saying they have all the resources, but they have a sizable resources for them to be able to invest at home. And this, of course, we're not looking at only in terms of money, but we're also looking at the knowledge, because knowledge, they said knowledge is power. I want to believe that it is true, although the right application of knowledge is actually the power. But if we have knowledge in our disposal, that means we already have something to work with. So now, you are in South Africa. I want you to speak to somebody that is in Canada. I mean, African in Canada, African in US, African in UK. What do you really want them to do? I mean, how do we nurse this idea of collaboration in a way that it should be the ultimate goal for every Africa, wherever you might be living in this world?
Let me start by saying that we have thriving communities in South Africa of nationalities that are not, who are immigrants in South Africa. We have the Nigerian community, we have the Somali community, we have the Ethiopian communities. These are communities that collaborate and network on a regular basis. Communities that many of us look at and say, if only all of us could do it in the same way Nigerians do it, could do it in the same way that Somalians do it, could do it in the same way that Ethiopians do it. They have this networking that many of us would want to emulate. And I think for those that are in America, in the United Kingdom, in China, and so on, of African origin, my call to them is we should begin to see each other as brothers and sisters when we are out there in the diaspora. We should not at any given time segregate one another as Africans. We need to come together, form communities that share ideas, that possibly come together to pool resources for investment on the African continent. It is important for us to do so because it is in these networking communities that we begin to understand ourselves as Africans, our history, and we begin also to understand why Africa is where it is at the moment. It is also important for us to network, to share ideas and knowledge so that we can demystify some of the myths that we normally get through social media and media, which is not pro-African. But we as Africans, when we come together, we can begin to share notes, experiences, and even to tell ourselves the truth so that it can set us free and begin to invest on the continent of Africa. Unfortunately, many of us have been made to believe that Africa is a dark continent, This is a myth. Africa is not a dark continent. It is a continent that is full of resources. It is a continent that has people full of knowledge and energy. It is a continent that still has a lot to be exploited in order for us to grow our economies. And it is in our hands as Africans in the diaspora to come together and find opportunities that are in Africa, into which we should invest as a collective, to which we can invest as individuals, to which we can manage in a manner that we always advocate that our leaders on the African countries should do. Because we cannot continue to clamor for something to be done on the African continent, yet we are out of Africa, of the continent, and we are not supporting or doing that which we believe should be done. It is in our hands, hence it is imperative that if we have Zimbabweans, Malawians, Nigerians, Ethiopians, Moroccans that are in one community in the United States of America, they should come together as Africans and treat one another and believe that the Africans who can come together and change the face of Africa through investment, sharing of ideas, experiences and exposure, which they've had during their stay out there. We are a critical component in the development of Africa, and we must be able to come together as brothers and sisters and work together to develop our continent.
Absolutely. We must see ourselves as brothers and sisters. And of course, this is an argument that we really need a lot of time to explore, because it doesn't happen just because the other time we talk about education. Education also have a lot of role to play in this, in why Africans in the diaspora. Okay, now I'm looking at African global, because we have a lot of different African community in the diaspora. Looking at from the period of slavery up until this moment, a lot of a negative seed that be sowed among us. For this, it becomes very difficult for us to network and collaborate among ourselves. We see ourselves to be different, whether we are one people, and there is a lot that needs to be done in this area. And like you are saying, it is when we gather together, when we come on the same table, and that is when we are able to see ourselves as one people, and then provide solution to the problem that we have. Because at the end of the day, the person who is just benefiting from our division, they only have that one as an objective. But that is not our objective. So we should look for a way to be able to overcome whatever it is that is heading us apart, so that we can build together and then grow. Now, another organization I would like you to speak to is ZIMSA, ZAMISA, which is another organization that you are working with. I think you have organized in South Africa, because this is our organization in southern part of Africa. Of course, we want to know about that. So share with us something in relation to that part.
An organization that was formed to bring together South Africans and Zimbabweans and other nationalities in South Africa to work together, resources together, collaboratively and networking, so that they can zero on the opportunities now abundant or that are in Zimbabwe. So ZIMSA in itself is an investment vehicle that was brought to be in order to bring together Afro-Zimbabweans in the diaspora, South Africans, Nigerians, and any other nationality, so that through this vehicle, they can find an avenue of exploiting and tapping in the opportunities, investment opportunities that are in Zimbabwe. And it has been growing, and we have had the investment summit where we were bringing business people so that they begin to learn of the opportunities that are in Zimbabwe. And this again is another form in which we thought that it can facilitate networking and collaboration amongst African brothers on the African continent.
All right, that is great. I'm trying also to understand how much collaboration do you see going on among between Africans, of course. In this case, we can also talk about southern part of Africa, but I'm looking at the kind of trade that exists among us if we're having enough going on between nations in Africa.
There is a lot of collaboration that seem to be taking place of late among East Africans. Even the trade figures are beginning to grow among African countries. And we believe that this is a trend that should continue, because we as Africans should understand and believe that we are better off using the resources that are on the African continent, beneficiating for our benefit, and exporting the surplus that we get. So this is an ongoing process, and we need many people to continue to advocate for the growth of trade amongst the Africans on the African continent. And once we do so, we will be able to grow our communities as countries, our economies as countries and as communities. And as Africans, we have also seen that quite a number of people are beginning to invest in different countries. South Africans investing in the DRC of Congo, in Congo, other in Mozambique, in Zimbabwe, and others as far as Nigeria. I think we know of MTN, which is in Nigeria. We have seen people like Strive Masiwa investing throughout on the African continent. We need many of these African brothers and sisters to encourage others to invest of Africa so that we can grow our communities. Like I've already indicated, it is in our hands. It is us Africans, both on the continent and in the diaspora, who can change the development course of our continent.
Thank you very much for that. We already said before that we don't have so much time to be able to explore this argument, even though it's very important. So we are now moving towards the end of it. So the question I would like to ask you now, Mr. Kennedy, is we made mention of two organizations, ZIMSA and the second one, I think, was Mamuda. So I want you to tell us what has been the outcome of this organization, something that we can say because this organization exists, there has been this positive story. Have they come up with an idea that have come to fruition? Is there something that we can learn from them? Share with us. We are moving towards the end of it. Please go.
Surely, with the ZIMSA, we have had quite a number of successes. We have held the investment conferences in South Africa, where we sought to bring people to know of the investment opportunities that are in Zimbabwe and those that are in Africa, so that as Africans, we can also invest in our communities. And as far as Mamuda is concerned, there is so much ground that has been covered in Musana and Masembura in terms of the mission that Mamuda seeks to achieve. The only challenge that I think is critical here is that we are coming from a position where there is very little in terms of funds. So we need to make use of the funds that are in that community that people bring together. So the pace at which Mamuda has been growing has not been as huge as we would have loved up to this point. But there has been a lot of excitement amongst the leadership. At one time, I had the pleasure of hosting leaders from Musana and Masembura for a leadership workshop here in South Africa, where they learned a lot in terms of how we can manage our communities and develop them using using the resources in the community, using the human capital in the communities. And we have seen quite a number of them going out there and putting it into practice. And we believe if we continue at this trajectory that we have been moving, we will be able to produce a model association that will be copied elsewhere for development purposes.
Absolutely. If we don't stop, we definitely will get to our destination. I really want to thank you so much, Mr. Kennedy. Your information are actually very valid and highly important for us and for those for the audience that are watching wherever they are watching from. All right, this is going to be the final. This is going to be the conclusion of the conversation for the constraint of time, no? Because if we have time, there are things I would have liked to ask you, but we don't have enough time, so we're going to conclude here. So what will be your final reflection, your recommendation, a kind of a message you want to leave the people with to conclude the conversation? Please go.
Thank you so much. Africa belongs to Africans, and it has been a song now that African problems require African solutions. Therefore, I want to leave the majority to the majority of my brothers and sisters on the continent of Africa and those that are in the diaspora, that networking and collaborating as Africans is the only way to go in order for us to redeem our continent from what it has been called for many years. It is important that wherever we are, be it on the African continent, we should be engaging one another, cooperating, collaborating, networking, exchanging ideas, working together on projects that seek to develop our communities. Even those that are in the diaspora, we need to come together as Africans. We need to remove the tag of self-hate and xenophobia, which has reared its head at some time on the African continent, and begin to value and see each other as brothers and sisters who can work together for the development of our communities in Africa. Africa's boundaries were imposed by colonialists. While we have them now and cannot do very little about them, there is still an opportunity for us as a people to come together, work together, and put our ideas and share our resources for the development of our communities. And the time is now for us to do so. We can't wait a day longer to start cooperating, to start collaborating and networking as Africans for the development of our community, of our continent. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that, sir. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And I believe that all of us that are watching, wherever you are watching from, you got a lot of benefit from today's podcast. It's something really highly valuable. So let's listen to what Mr. Kennedy has said. The power is in our hand. The African diaspora, you have a lot of power. And of course, the Africans at home, that you can't even speak of that, because that is the engine of humanity. It's just because we haven't realized how powerful, how potential we are in the world. But we are gradually realizing it. We are gradually realizing that we don't really need somebody to come and give us the name that we want to call ourselves. We don't need somebody to come and tell us that it is time for us. We are the one that decide that. And whenever we decide it, that is the right time.
If you enjoy this podcast, make sure you subscribe so you never miss any of our future episodes. Rate and review Obehi Podcast and share with your friends who might need it. I remain Obehi Ewanfo. Thank you so much for listening, and talk to you in the next episode.